April 16th Sandag Public Safety Committee meeting. Why don't we go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could, where you are at, please place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, thank you again for joining us. Before we jump to the meeting, I will ask our clerk to confirm that we have quorum. I believe we did say that we did, but Francesca, can you double check?
Yes, Chair, we do have a quorum.
Fabulous. I'd like to remind the members of the public and the members of our virtual dais that committee members will be using their cameras and we will be taking live public comments. Members are asked to turn on their cameras when they have a comment or a question, and then I'll recognize you. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak on an item, please use the raise hand icon in the Zoom toolbar and unmute yourself when you are called on. If you are calling into the meeting, please press *9 if you would like to comment on an item. And apologies, my little one is going to her closed, I want to say closed session, but into her Zoom room for her class. So 2 seconds. All right, so with that, we go into item number 1, and it's the approval of meeting minutes. If a member of the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand now. And if there are any public safety committee members that would like to comment, please turn on your camera. We are keeping an eye on this.
How about we go like unicorn? Let's do it too.
Mr. Brainerd, did you have a comment on that?
That's a nice time, Cindy.
No? Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved, Sheriff Gore.
I have a motion from Member Gore. Do I hear a second? I will second. Francesca, can we call the roll?
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, wait, before we do that, do we have any members of the public wishing to address us on this item?
Thank you. No, I don't see any hands from the public.
Okay, great. Please call the roll.
Thank you. For the County Chiefs Sheriff's Association, Chief Kennedy.
Approved.
Thank you. For the County Chiefs Association Seat B, I didn't see Chuck K or Ed Varso on the line. Are either of you present with us? I believe that seat is absent. For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Campillo?
Yes.
Thank you. The County of San Diego is absent today. For the San Diego County District Attorney, Chief Investigator Jorge Duran?
Yes.
Thank you. For East County is absent today. For Regional Fire Emergency Medical Services, Chief Brainerd?
Yes.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Councilmember Blackburn?
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Councilmember Frank?
Aye.
Thank you. The San Diego Police Department is absent. For the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Gore?
Aye.
Thank you. And for South County, Chair Sotelo Solis?
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you. And that item does pass with those members present.
Thank you so much there, Francesca. We now go on to item 2. It is public comment and any member comment regarding any issues not on today's agenda. I'd first like to welcome Mr. Eric Wood, our new Argus Director. Eric has had 6 years of experience in law enforcement as a Chief Innovation Officer at Chula Vista Police Department. And prior to his time with Chula Vista Police Department, Eric worked at Microsoft as a principal consultant for 15 years. Bienvenido, Eric. If any member of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand. Any members of the dais like to speak on this item, or any public comments not on the agenda? Anything not on the agenda? Seeing
I
none,
don't see any hands from the public.
fabulous. We now go on to item 3. Item 3 is the executive director's report, and I believe today we do have Mr. Grata.
No, Chair, I'm sorry. Hassan could not make it today. He has an appointment with the Navy, and so I am going to fill in for him. And I'm Jim Linthicum. I'm the head of, I'm Hassan's chief of capital programs and regional services. And
Well,
so,
welcome, Jim. We appreciate you being here.
thank you very much. And could I just start off by saying, I don't know if all the committee members know we have a celebrity in this meeting today. Councilmember Musgrove is the uncle of Padres no-hit pitcher Joe Musgrove. And as a lifelong Padres fan, or at least for the past 40 years, I'm so thrilled with what happened last Friday night.
It was a great night. It's good to have him back. We'll see how this goes with the series with the Dodgers. Let's hope for the best.
Especially with the Dodgers, yes. Okay, thank you. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome our new Argus director, Eric Wood. And, wow, we're really looking forward to having Eric here. And like you said, Chair, he has a background in law enforcement, used to work for the city of Chula Vista, and Chief Kennedy gave him up, thankfully. And he also had service with long time with Microsoft before that. So it's a great combination, the technology with the law enforcement, which will really serve the region well. Pam Scanlon, many of you probably knew Pam. She passed away a little over a year ago, and she was the founder of Argus, and very, very sorely missed. And after she passed away, Chief Craig Carter recently retired from Escondido PD. He took over as an interim, and he did a fantastic job. And I don't know if Craig is on the call today, but I just want to thank him and welcome Eric. So we really look forward to the future where Eric's going to take Argus. Okay, moving on to transportation. We continue to advance the Central Mobility Hub, and next week you'll see the release of what we call the Notice of Preparation. And Sandag's moving forward with the work on the Central Mobility Hub. And the NOP, the Notice of Preparation, is the first thing that you do when you start the environmental process. And so we envision that this hub is going to be able to connect transit from all over the region, and it's the key mobility hub. You hear this term mobility hub a lot when discussions with the regional plan. It's going to be the key mobility hub, and it's going to be developed for the 2021 regional plan. We're going to, as part of this environmental process, we're going to explore 2 potential locations, one being the Navy's Old Town Complex. Sometimes you hear it referred to as NAVWAR. It used to be called SPAWAR. And so that's one location. And a second location is what's called the Intermodal Transportation Center site, which has been in the regional transportation plan for a number of years now. That's on Pacific Highway near Washington Street. And we'll also consider a trolley extension alternative as part of the environmental process. It's the Central Mobility Hub, or this transportation hub. It provides not just transportation benefits, but huge economic, housing, environmental benefits for the region. And so really looking forward to getting going more on that and bringing it closer to fruition. You all can learn, and the public can learn more about the project with a virtual meeting that you'll see announced that we're going to have that next month in May. Okay, and I mentioned the regional plan. So lots happening with the regional plan before we bring it to the board for hopeful approval this fall. And last week, our board of directors at the board meeting, staff discussed how technology is going to shape the future transportation and mobility options, with things like the Internet of Things and big data and artificial intelligence, things we've all been hearing about for a number of years now. This provides the public with mobility solutions that just didn't exist or couldn't have been planned for 20 years ago. And so last Friday, the board heard from outside experts on technology from Ford Motor Company, Qualcomm, and a company named Aspire, and had a great discussion about how we're incorporating this technology into the new regional plan. And as we continue to develop the plan, we're going to provide more updates to the board, and you're always welcome to tune in to these virtual meetings. And in fact, the next one is a week from today, is next Friday, And the focus on that meeting will not be on technology, but the focus will be on social equity in the regional plan. Okay, switching gears, we've all been seeing and reading about the Biden administration's infrastructure plan recently that was just announced. It's doing exactly the type of work that we're doing here at Sandag. And the principles that are laid out in the president's plan are focused on equity, climate, building the economy, things exactly what our plan is focused on. And so we see connections to not only that part of Sandag's work, but with our 5 priority projects that we've been working on for a while now. The 5 are the central or the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry, the extension of SR 11, and the new Port of Entry down in Otay Mesa, the Central Mobility Hub, which we just talked about, the regional plan, the Mid-Coast Trolley, and also our work to stabilize the Del Mar Bluffs and ultimately move the tracks off the bluffs, because we can only hold back Mother Nature for so long. In addition, the plan is going to include a commitment to provide all Americans, the Biden administration plan, with affordable, reliable, and high-speed internet. And the pandemic really shed a light on that digital divide and the inequities that exist in our very own community here in San Diego. And as far as the advancing the infrastructure plan, San Diego is ready. We polled our region, our member agencies, and we came up with a list of about 120 projects that are ready to move forward in the next just 18 months, in the next year and a half. And those 120 projects are worth $1.9 billion. So we pride ourselves on being ready in this region, and I believe we are. And so we're going to also be working with our congressional delegation to review the finer details of what's in the plan and what we can best compete for, because this is really a once in a lifetime opportunity to try to get some of these critical infrastructure needs funded. Okay, I touched lightly on the Del Mar Bluffs, and what we're doing there is we're stabilizing the bluffs, because you might remember in late February, I think February 26th, there was another landslide that took a big chunk of the bluffs off the railroad in Del Mar, or adjacent to the railroad in Del Mar, and it ended up knocking over a retaining wall and ending up on the beach. So like last weekend, this weekend, we're going to have another rail closure, so we can work on doing what we've been planning on doing to secure the bluffs. We're just advancing it many months. And so this, one of the differences is, this will be a 3-day closure. Like last weekend, a 3-day closure where normally the tracks are only closed for 2 days. And so there'll be what's called a bus bridge to bus patrons come Monday morning around this closure on the rail line. And this work is going to continue through July. And in fact, July at the latest, because we're making very, very good progress. And finally, last update will be on the Mid-Coast Trolley. We love the Mid-Coast Trolley. Love talking about it. Work continues to move forward. Major construction should be completed this summer. And what you're going to see starting this summer is, if you drive along I-5 or if you're on the UCSD campus, you're going to see the iconic red trolley cars going up and down, not with passengers, but doing test runs where the contractor and Sandag and MTS test the system, and then the drivers and the operator learn the system, and they get to know it in practice runs before we start revenue service later on this year. And also there's several concurrent projects underway. A lot of them are done, like double tracking on the Los Angeles corridor. But a couple that are not yet done is the realignment of Campus Point Drive on the UCSD campus, and a great looking new bridge where if you drive I-5 up in that area, up in the UTC area, you see a great new bridge over I-5, extends Gilman Drive on both sides of campus. And then finally, the last project that's going to open up in the coming weeks is the Rose Creek Bike Path, and really looking forward to that. So, Chair, that concludes my report, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'd like to see if there are any questions from members of the Public Safety Committee. And if you would like to speak, go ahead and turn on your camera. And Ms. Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to address us on anything that Jim just shared with us?
No, Chair, no hands from the public.
Great. Seeing none from the members of the, oh, Ms. Mugg, I see your camera on. Did you have a question for Jim? Okay, great. Seeing none, thank you so much, Jim. And we will let Hassan know that he thinks the Navy is better than us. I will be texting him. Just let him know that.
Okay. Oh, I got you. Yes, thank you.
Exactly. All right, with that, we go on to item 4, and it is the update from the Chiefs Association. What is it? The Sheriffs and Chiefs Management Committee. And we have Miss Chief Roxana Kennedy from, it says Carlsbad, but I believe it's Chula Vista, no?
That was a good one, but I did enjoy, no one has pronounced my name quite as well as you have, so I appreciate that. So thank you, Chair and committee members. I am sitting in today for Chief Neil Galucci from the Carlsbad Police Department, but I am Roxana Kennedy. I'm from the Chula Vista Police Department, and I'm here to provide a report out to you. So last week, the Chiefs and Sheriffs Management Committee held a meeting on Wednesday, April 7th, 2021. And the Management Committee reviewed and recommended that the Public Safety Committee recommend approval of the ARGIS budget of $8.02 million and the Criminal Justice Research budget of $1.31 million as a part of the final fiscal year 2022 program budget. And Dr. Cindy Burke also presented to us a report on the regional crime trend from 1980 through 2020. And both of these topics will be presented to you today in the presentations. The next meeting that we have scheduled for our management committee will be on Wednesday, May 12th, 2021. And that is all that I have to report unless there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Chief. Are there any questions for members of the PSC? Seeing none, Ms. Clerk, are there any members of the public wishing to address us on this item?
No, Chair, no public comments.
Fabulous. This was for information only, and I really appreciate you, Chief, for being here and being good neighbors to the south, to National City. Gracias.
Thank you.
All right, we now go on to item 5, which is the update and a report from San Diego County Fire Chiefs Association with Chief Brainerd.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this. I've just got 2 things I want to provide to you. Number one is we have had an increase, quite a significant increase across the op area county when it comes to homeless encampment fires. And those are dangerous in the sense that many of these encampments are out in the WUI, or the interface, the vegetation. And on certain days of the year, the Santa Ana conditions, low humidity, dry fuels, we anticipate that that's going to be a significant threat for us this coming fire season. And speaking of the fire season, with the relatively low rainfall and the dry snowpacks and just basically the conditions we've been facing over the last couple of years, we are anticipating a significant fire season again this year. And as you know, for whatever reason, the last 5 or 6 years, the majority of the devastating fires have been occurring through that Santa Barbara, Riverside, San Bernardino, Los Angeles area, a little bit of Orange County. We've been somewhat spared from the major couple 100,000 acre fires, but it's only a matter of time because we have hundreds of thousands of acres of dead fuel and dead trees out in our backcountry that on a Santa Ana then spread and push into our urban areas. So we're already training. We've got an all county wildland drill where every agency sends crews to participate. We figured out strategies to keep people safe with all the COVID, and we're doing what we can. CAL FIRE has got a significant uptick in their available aircraft, and they're even doing some training to get some C-130s into their fleet training this year and in a fleet for next year, which will give us a lot more upfront when we want to hit these fires hard and keep them small. With that, that's all I've got to report unless there's any questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chief. Any comments from members of the public there, Francesca?
No, Chair, no hands from the public.
Any members of the committee wishing to address or ask the Chief any questions? Seeing none, all right. We are moving right along. We are now on to item 6. Item 6 is the new grant funding for criminal justice research, and we have Ms. Sandy Keaton. Take it away. You are muted, Ms. Sandy.
Always. Okay, so good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I'm really excited to bring a new project to you and a new with the ongoing partner that we have. As this committee is aware, the Criminal Justice Research Division relies heavily on funding through grants and also our partnerships. And because of our ongoing work with the juvenile justice system and the justice providers, we were actually approached by the district attorney to support their new juvenile diversion initiative, or otherwise known as JDI. I'm here today to share information about this new project, which requires an amendment to our fiscal year 21 budget. It is actually a 3-year project in total. San Diego County, as you know, is transforming the current juvenile justice system to increase alignment with best practices, which includes expanding diversion opportunities for youth to receive supports in the community and to reduce future contact with the system. San Diego District Attorney's Office is pursuing a new initiative that will provide youth facing a misdemeanor or a felony charge the option to voluntarily participate in the JDI before charges are filed as an alternative prosecution and to avoid future negative consequences and outcomes associated with formal proceedings, such as recidivism, stigmatization, labeling, criminal record, and increased criminal justice costs. This really is a pioneer effort on the district attorney's part. SANDRAG is the current evaluation partner for probation's diversion programs and is experienced with the elements of diversion, the data metrics to document its implementation. And because of staff's background checks, has access to the needed justice information and also the knowledge to gather that information from the system. SANDRAG will conduct a process and impact evaluation to measure if the project was implemented as designed and to what effect. The process evaluation will focus on what and how well the project was implemented and who was served. And the outcome evaluation will employ a mixed method kind of quasi-experimental design to determine the outcomes as they relate to recidivism. So this is an information item only, and I bring this to the Public Safety Committee for an amendment to the FY 2021 budget to add $36,000 to start to implement the evaluation activities. Thank you all. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Sandy. Are there any questions from members of the virtual dais here, members of the committee? Okay, are there any members of the public wishing to address us on this item?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
All right, this is for information only, but again, anytime we can look to expanding the research, I think it's extremely important. So thank you so much there, Sandy, appreciate it. We now go into item 7, and I believe Katie Muggs will be presenting first, followed by Sandy Keaton. And this is a draft fiscal year 2022 public safety work program and budget. Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. And just to make sure, can everybody see me and hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon. Thank you for being here and for helping us with the development of our draft budget. I'm here to talk about the FY22 ARGIS draft budget. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start off with just highlighting some of our key priorities. So these areas are the major initiatives that we'll be embarking on next year. The first is to continue implementing NIBRS, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. And to just add another acronym in there, we are also transitioning to the California Incident-Based Reporting System. So both of these systems, which are required by the FBI and Cal DOJ, essentially are going to change the way that we report crime statistics across the nation and the state. ARGIS has been leading this effort. If I mentioned this at the last committee, and if you weren't at that committee, we presented this several times, and we will be presenting this again. But essentially, it's going to allow us to report on a lot more data, which is really exciting for the region. So our primary focus next year is to develop a communications plan. So we need the region to be on the same page with how we talk about this amongst each other and with the media and to the public. So as we've done in the past, because we have such a great collaboration in the San Diego County with our public safety agencies, we'll be coming up with a plan that we will all communicate, and the statistics will be changing. So we want to explain that. In addition to that, we're going to be developing new public app mapping applications and crime statistics. This is exciting because we haven't updated our public applications in quite some time. In addition to the whole NIBRs and cybers, we're going to be looking at our cost model and our member agency structure, and continue enhancing the mobile program, which I will discuss. And something that I'm really happy and proud of is the work that we've done to get grant funding in collaboration with the Sheriff's Department to enhance our cybersecurity and our data storage. Next slide, please. So our FY22 budget is a little over 8 million. It's larger than it has been in the past, but this is primarily due to the fact that we just got about $1.5 million about 2 weeks ago in grant funding, which is I'm so thankful to this committee who supported it, and to the chiefs and sheriffs who did as well. But back to the member agency fees. So what are you going to be paying? The core member agencies, so these are the police departments and the sheriff who contribute data to ARGIS, remain unchanged. The member affiliate agencies remain unchanged as well. We have two types. There's one grouping, it's the city and district attorney probation and Mission Bay Harbor. And they pay for only their user and connectivity fees because they have a parent agency, the county or the city, paying their membership fees. The contract cities are the cities that the sheriff provides services to. So this is Del Mar, Encinitas, Imperial, you can see the rest on the slide. And they only pay membership fees. This was figured out maybe 15 years or so ago. Then we have ex officio. So these are all of the agencies, such as the FBI, Cal DOJ, the state, the military, and these are the agencies that pay to access ARGIS. About, I want to say 2 years ago, but it was probably 6 or 7 years ago with the way that time goes. I think it was probably longer than 2. Anyways, this committee agreed to start increasing ex officio's fees by the CPI each year. And so this year it's minimal. It's not a huge increase, but we are recommending a 1.62% increase for the ex officio fees. I believe last year the CPI was 2.6. So it's maybe anyways. Yes, thank you. Whoa, no, go ahead. So our primary budget categories, I broke this up into just categories I think y'all will understand a little bit easier than doing the SANDAG project breakdown. So we've changed our projects and the way that they're funding quite a bit this year. So we've tried to better retrofit the money to where it should go properly. And what I'm trying to say is we separated out mobile because we wanted to really track how much are we spending on mobile. So that made a decrease in our infrastructure. So just in case anybody were to compare these numbers to last year's, that is the reason. And I'll go into each of these numbers during the next few slides. Starting with maintenance, which is the next slide, if you could go to. So maintenance is about 2.1 million. This is our largest category. Next, please. And so I want to give you kind of an idea about what does maintenance go to? How are these monies spent? So this funding is spent on maintaining and monitoring all of our interfaces. So that's how the funding comes into the data comes into ARGIS and how it goes back out of ARGIS. And these 50 interfaces were developed by us, mostly about 80%, and we monitor them 24/7. We have a full-time DBA, database administrator, who we fund out of maintenance as well. The help desk, to give you an example, we responded to 640 tickets in 2020. Our staff does that. We don't contract that for that. We answer the phone 24/7, our team of 16. So we also, under this category is also our data center, our maintenance for NIBRS, I use as an example, but kind of our maintenance for our UCR crime statistics program, and our application development team and off-the-shelf software. Next, please. So I'd like to just briefly talk about the applications we develop and build and also license. We have an in-house team of 5 programmers. They are brilliant. We are very lucky to have them. And they've developed about half of the apps that ARGIS provides to the member agencies. And so because we have them in-house, we don't have to go through vendors for change management requests or contract modifications just over like an enhancement to a system. We can actually do that on our own and just assign a programmer to make a change after the agencies talk, which is really efficient, and we get really great feedback from all of your jurisdictions, which is appreciated. On the flip side, we do contract for some of our applications that are more on the analytical side. So our mapping application, our I2, which is like a heavy kind of data analysis tool. But the beauty of sharing these licenses because of ARGIS is that we split all of the fees, all of the charges by 60 plus agencies. So for example, we pay $6,000 in maintenance for our mapping application a year, which is very, anyways, that's split between 60 agencies, which is really amazing when you think about the cost savings that ARGIS is helping the region with. So in addition to supporting all this, next year, our big push for applications is to implement COPLINK X. COPLINK is our it's more of our investigative tool. And it will be the first application that we access the data from through the cloud. So this is a big project for us next year too, to make sure we're in alignment with Cal DOJ and FBI for all the security. Next slide, please. So our data center, I can't say enough about this data center. It's the FBI backup site. It's Endless is the data center, and I'm sorry, this slide should say 3 billion transactions. They process 3 billion transactions a year. And they also have this amazing data center. It's like stepping into the future when you go there, with cameras and iris scans. So I really believe it's a very safe place for our data to be saved and hosted. Next slide, please. So administration, this is about 1.5 million. Next, please. So essentially this goes towards committee support. We actually have a clerk that Argus funds, and just as a reminder, Argus is completely separately funded from Sandag. We are member agency and grant funded. So administration also goes towards finance, budgeting, legal, personnel, rent, operations, supplies, grant administration, program staff, and contract execution. Next, please. So mobile. As I mentioned at the beginning, I don't think I articulated that well, and I apologize for that. But I separated this out, mobile, into mobile maintenance and mobile grants. So now I'm going to talk about mobile maintenance, which is 563,000 and some. So I think everybody that has been on this committee longer than a couple months knows about our mobile program because we promote it heavily, and it is one of the best in the nation. We have about 1,200 mobile devices in the field, and our maintenance pays for, oh, sorry, something just flickered my computer. So our support pays for our mobile device manager, our two-factor authentication, just managing the bills in general is pretty complex, as it's 1,200 mobile devices. And also we have a mobile project manager who incorporates all of the grant funded new technologies that we create into the maintenance program, the maintenance mobile program. Next, please. So infrastructure. Next, please. This is about 1.7 million. So this is allocated for our network, which I keep reiterating is probably the backbone of what we do, and how all of the agencies in the region are able to connect to each other. In addition, they can also connect from Argus. We are the connection to Cal DOJ for many of the agencies and jurisdictions. For wants and warrants. We also are the connection to the Sheriff's Department they have a great suite of tools also. And then also to Argus. So we also provide all the network support. We have one network engineer, he's brilliant, can't say enough about him. He's funded under this project. So next year we're going to be replacing some servers, and our big push, besides maintaining the network, is to continue with an assessment of our network, which we've been doing. We've been working with Enlit's, our data center host, to have them penetrate our network and provide us with reports on how we're doing, and we're implementing recommendations, everything that we can to prevent any type of cyber attack. We are really going to focus on that next year. Next slide, please. Just again, we have a full-time system administrator now, and he takes care of all the patching we do on Sunday mornings, on monitoring our databases, our servers. Next year, the focus in this area is going to be on really strengthening our disaster recovery and our backup and our database systems. Next, please. Grants. So this is where I'm get excited about, because I'm proud of this one. This is the largest amount of grants that we've gotten, that we've received ever in Argus history. So good job this year. Thanks to this committee for supporting us. Thanks to the Chief Sheriff's Management Committee for supporting us. It paid off. So I'll start with just mobile. We're going to be, and this fingerprint reader project was delayed because of COVID. So essentially these devices, we are going to be in collaboration with the Sheriff's Department, procuring and providing to officers in the field after we develop a policy. I believe the Sheriff's Department has initiated the policy, and we will be bringing it back to this committee, of course. Connected Officer is another grant where we are going to be able to provide your jurisdictions with additional smartphones. And we're also going to pilot a smartwatch project from this, where officers can check really quickly and access their CAD through their phone. And we'll be happy to bring back a mobile update on all of this moving forward. Trying to go quickly, integrating the e-citations application. So we developed an e-citations application under former Argus Director, Chief Carter. I still call him Chief, under former Director Argus Carter. Anyways, so we developed this really awesome application that allows officers to enter citations on a phone in the field. And the data accuracy alone is substantially better when they're doing this, because the data entry people don't have to decipher the handwriting. There's oftentimes addresses where people are unsure of when they're writing tickets, first and B, etc. This application takes care of all of that. So next year, we're trying to develop an interface to the court and back to the agencies so that there's a seamless flow of citation information between the courts, the agencies, using the Argus tool. And to continue trainings, we have a full-time trainer. She's wonderful. She comes from San Diego PD. She's grant funded as well. Next, please. Okay, this is the best grant I think we've received in a really long time. Essentially, what this is going to do is really bolster our security and our infrastructure. So $550,000 will go towards our data storage. So currently we maintain about 20 million records, more than that, from the data contributing agencies. And we have 5 more agencies that want to contribute data. So we need to expand our data storage to be able to allow for this. We also need to expand it we want to increase our performance, which isn't bad now at all, but just we're really trying to make improvements where we can. And I believe this money is going to go to a great use. Cybersecurity, $450,000. I'm most excited about this project. It's because I believe we collaborated with the Sheriff's Department, and I believe that we did a really good job on the project overall. So essentially what we're going to do is establish a cyber expert task force. And the task force will be comprised of representatives from each of your jurisdictions. And we're really going to discuss what do we need to do to be the most secure region in the country. So that is exciting. And the funding also, the sheriff got funding for equipment, and so did Argus, to buy some really advanced tools to help safeguard your data. So I just wanted to say thanks to the Chiefs and Sheriffs Management Committee. They really helped us with this one. So Chief Kennedy, thank you if you're still on. Next, please. Finally, this is my last slide. As I mentioned at the beginning, NIBRS, we have grant funding for this. This is going to continue to be probably the #1 thing we talk about and our most important initiative over the next 2 years. As I mentioned, we're going to be developing applications off of the new data sets that we're going to be generating for NIBRS. And with that, we're also going to create like a really dynamic mapping application for your jurisdictions and for the region. So you can go in and say, show me 3 years ago, victims of this crime with this MO, etc. around a certain area. So we're really excited for this. We've already established a task force. We have a GIS analyst that is on staff at ARGIS. So this is going to be a really exciting project, especially as it relates to the public, because we haven't released a new public product in a while. So I'm very excited about what we have coming up in FY22. I believe that is it. So questions for me? Sorry if I went too fast. I know ARGIS is always a lot of information to take.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that snapshot and the breakdown of where our money goes. So I think it's really important to have those details. I do have Councilmember Campillo. Do you have a question for Ms. Mugg?
Yes, thank you so much for that really detailed presentation. And as a former prosecutor in the San Diego City Attorney's Office, I know how important ARGIS is to our job and how needed the improvements are. And really, this is excellent. You and your team have done a great job here. Just wondering real quickly here about, well, first of all, for the research team, how many staff members does that team have?
So the research team is under Dr. Burke's group. So that's the criminal justice research division, which you will hear about after this. Okay. At ARGIS, we have one research analyst. We only have our team's comprised of 16 people now. At max, it's 18. We currently have one research analyst that's helping with NIBRS and our data quality, but the research side of the house is with Dr. Burke's Criminal Justice Research Division.
Understood. Okay, thank you. And in terms of the, as I'm looking at the uses of the funding, I guess developing better data sharing techniques, what exactly does that look like in terms of data sharing? I mean, where's, I guess, the disconnect for folks so that it can be improved?
I guess, what are you just talking about, data sharing in general?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, which area, like which part, do you know which, was there a particular slide or something that I said?
Well, I think there part of the funding is going towards improving data sharing, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so what are the impediments to that right now that are going to be improved by this?
Well, I think right now we're struggling with legislation moving very quickly. I mean, technology moving very quickly, and legislation and policies being able to keep up that pace. Mm-hmm. That's in my opinion, and Eric or anybody, please chime in. But I see Eric. Hi.
Yeah, I would just add that there's quite a bit of work to maintain what has now become an aging infrastructure, servers and storage, that is a big part of keeping that data sharing structure alive and healthy. And also, as Katie mentioned, there's a lot of officers at various member agencies that still don't have smartphones. So that data sharing and real-time nature of that data availability in the initial response is a big piece of this that still needs to be addressed.
Understood. Okay. Well, I'm happy to know that this is where I know what it's like when you got, suspects crossing jurisdictions, and, I totally understand why this is needed. So I appreciate that we're going to be spending some money on that. No further questions from me, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Campillo. Any other questions from members of the PSC? Seeing none, are there any members of the public wishing to ask a question on Katie's portion of the presentation?
Thank you, Chair. I don't see any hands from the public.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie. We now go to Sandy's portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. Can you guys see me this time? Because I guess I even though I was on camera, I wasn't on camera. Am I visual? Can you guys see or no?
Yes,
We see you now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Something weird happened that way. So good afternoon again. And it's my pleasure to present our proposed fiscal year 2022 budget to you all. Next slide, please, Kendall. Thank you. Okay, so our fiscal year 22 to proposed budget is about $1.3 million. This actually doesn't include the new funding I just spoke about and asked for to let you know that we are the new JDAI project. As in past years, the majority of our CG budget is driven by grants and collaborations. And as you can see, the adult and juvenile projects comprise most of our budget. However, Clearinghouse is about 20% of that, and the remaining funds is our substance abuse monitoring program. I'm planning to just go through and touch on briefly what these projects are, just to give you a sense. And most of them you'll have heard about from the last month's presentation on accomplishments. Next, thank you so much. So the Clearinghouse activities really is the cornerstone of our division and is funded through the SANDAG member assessments. And through our Clearinghouse budget, we produce and do a lot of the work that you are all familiar with. It stayed fairly constant throughout the years. We have had slight CPI increases each year, which Katie also alluded to in her discussion. In FY22, it's less than 2%, about $3,700 in total. With the Clearinghouse funds, staff will provide the following activities next year. We'll continue to be the only region-wide source for verification and analysis of the crime data. These data are then presented in a series of crime bulletins. We have our mid-year crime, and then we also have the annual crime data, which Dr. Burke is going to present on and just released. We also have our annual arrest data and our public safety bulletin, which you heard last time we convened. And from these data, we also disseminate smaller CJ flashes as well. We'll work in partnership with the jurisdictions and of course ARGIS on the UCR, NIBRS, CYBERS transformation that is occurring. We'll continue to support the local task forces, providing, presenting when needed, providing information and expertise. And my computer just went black. Hold on, please. Thank you so much. We produce 12 CJ flashes out of this budget, 9 bulletins and briefs annually, not just only on crime, but we also pay attention to current trends and concerns in the region and try to tie our local data to those trends as well, to give you that larger perspective. We, through SAM, analyze data through an objective measure and track trends over the years. Staff, of course, support the Public Safety Committee here. We present to local groups on key issues. We are always available to do so. In fact, we enjoy doing so. And as I noted, because the brunt of our funding is brought into the division, we also work on grant proposals, either as the primary author or as a partner in the project. Next, please. Excuse me. The Clearinghouse data also allows us to provide some unique services to the region to support other stakeholders' work. Our close trusted partnerships with ARGIS and you all as well is really key to us being able to do this. Through our SAM project, we'll be able to make any type of adjustments we feel locally would better inform stakeholders because we now have local control of that data. This is going to be especially relevant next year because we'll be looking at how COVID may have impacted this population. All this work is possible, as I noted earlier, because of our background checks and our knowledge of the different systems and the data sets. Next, please. So the substance abuse monitoring, one of our longer programs, as you may or may not be aware, in 2003, we lost national funding for that, but because of local interest and also value that was placed on this information, we were able to maintain this project and continue to maintain this project. Also, because of the local funding, we were able to adapt the tool each year, and we always do every year. We reconvene with the stakeholders and we discuss if there's any current trends or information that they feel is missing in the region and that we can support with this project. The project is funded through the generosity of HIDA, San Diego County Health and Human Service Agency, and also the membership assessments. Specific expenses for this in FY22 revolve around just the logistics, the staffing to do the interviews, the drug testing, paying our sheriff's department to provide the security while we are in the institutions, and the analysis and the summaries actually come through our clearinghouse funds. Next, please. So this slide details our adult projects. And in FY22, we have 5 adult projects right now, 3 of which we're actually ending. Our STAR project is a partnership with Probation, San Diego County Sheriff's Department, San Diego Health and Human Services, and the Neighborhood House Association. And it's a reentry project where individuals who've been booked and held in our facilities locally, medium to high risk supervision, are released to through a warm handoff to a community provider to provide them and try to link them with services once they're in the community. Prop 47 is an evaluation of the Prop 47 fundings that came down from the state. County of San Diego is the lead administrator on this project in partnership with the city attorney's office. The funds provide support for 3 treatment types of intervention for individuals who are Prop 74 eligible. They have a Prop 74 eligible offense, either currently or in their past. We are conducting the process and impact evaluation for this project, and that should be out in the fall, the analysis for that. Our REACH Coalition is working with our North County Lifeline partner, and also they are a partner on the specialized housing. NCL, as they're called, which really has taken the lead in working with individuals who are victims of human trafficking. We've been supporting them and will continue to support them in FY22 to help provide the information they need to tell their story. And we're very excited about our HIDA project, which will also be finishing up in FY22, looking at the current impact maybe some of these legislative changes have that aren't always necessarily captured in the normal way we look at crime data. Next, please. So our juvenile justice projects are the largest budget item in FY22. And this is really rooted in one of our longest and most successful partnerships with the San Diego County Probation Department and the other juvenile justice partners such as the court and the district attorney and the public defender's office. The JJCPA, which is the Juvenile Crime Prevention Act, is our largest funded project. And it really allows us to provide information to the county and the region on the impact and effect some of these juvenile justice projects are having on the youth that they serve. We also work with local providers on a Promise Neighborhood initiative. This one is a San Diego PN. We will continue to work with SBCS as they work with partners in the Barrio Logan and San Isidro area and provide those services. RED is reducing racial and ethnic disparities. Again, this is a partnership with probation as they constantly look at any disproportionality, and we are the key evaluation or research partner to help provide them the data to make informed decision if it is there, and if so, why, and how can they adjust that. Impact, again, is a partnership with our NCL partners up in the North County, working with youth who are high risk. And the Credible Messenger program is actually through a CalVIP fund looking at evaluating mentorship programs to youth who are very high risk for continued involvement in the justice system. Next, please. So basically this slide summarizes everything I just went through and reflected in our proposed budget. Our priorities reflect our commitment to be responsive to our members, to our partners and our stakeholders in the region to provide not only their informational needs, but also support them in their implementation of their programs. We'll continue to track our crime and other statistics, especially in light of the legislative and public policy changes. We'll work closely with our partner, Argus, in their transitioning to NIBRS and the cybers in the region. We continue to seek grant funding. In fact, Dr. Burke has, I think, filled out 5 grants this year alone. We'll provide relevant, timely information. We really do try to provide information in short, visually appealing chunks, so it's easily digestible, and also gets out in a timely manner. We continue to work in SANDAG in our department to help further our SANDAG mission. And with that, I conclude my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Also, just to let you know how many staff are on our in the research division. I've had to go through and write this down because I had it right here. Hold on. We have 7. Hang on here. I had it right here. Sorry. There we go. We have 7 full-time staff, but we also have 5 research assistants, and we also partner within the research and program management team and draw upon staff there as well to support our projects as needed. So item 7, the recommendation.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandy. Really appreciate that. Are there
Sure.
any comments from member of the public wishing to address us on this item?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
Okay, great. Are there any comments from members of the committee? And this is for item 7, again, the draft fiscal year 2022 public safety work program and budget. This is for approval. We are looking at, as you can see on the screen, the recommendation. I'm sorry?
I didn't know if you wanted me to read it, but you got it. Go for it.
Oh, sorry. The recommendation is that the PSC recommend to the full board of directors to accept the public safety work program and budget as part of the final fiscal year 2022 budget program budget. Are there, is there a motion, or what is the pleasure of the
I'll happily
virtual-
make the motion to move forward with the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Member Campillo. So here's a second.
Second that, Sheriff Gore.
Second from Member Gore. Seeing any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. For the County Chief Sheriff's Association, Chief Kennedy?
Yes.
Thank you. Seat B is absent. For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Campillo?
Campillo votes yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego is absent. For the San Diego County District Attorney's Office, Chief Investigator Duran?
Yes.
Thank you. East County is absent. For the Regional Fire and Emergency Medical Services, Chief Brainerd?
Votes yes.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Councilmember Blackburn?
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Councilmember Frank?
Yes.
Thank you. The San Diego Police Department is absent. For the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Gore?
Yes.
Thank you. And for South County, Chair Sotelo Solis?
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you very much, and that does pass with those members present.
Okay. Well done, crew. We now move on to item 8, and it is the crime in San Diego region from 1980 to 1920. I would ask that we have Dr. Burke lead us in this item. Take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Sotelo Solis and PSC members. We're very excited to share these data with you. We have 41 years of crime data, and we could not do it without your support and the support of our local law enforcement agencies who enable us to compile these data, do the analysis, and prepare these statistical reports for you. So if you can go to the next slide. The information, I know this is a first PSC meeting to see some of these data for some of you. So what we do look at is crime rates per 1,000 population, and we look at resident population. And it's important when you consider some of those statistics that it doesn't reflect daytime populations, and there may be jurisdictions where somebody, Coronado or Del Mar, for example, where individuals go in for events, and that does not reflect the population. There's also only 7 crimes that we track here. These are called Part 1, and they're tracked in a standardized way by the FBI: homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, and then burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft. There's Part 2 crimes, such as drug offenses or driving under the influence or identity theft, which aren't included here. But as you'll hear at future PSC meetings, we are transitioning to a new system of recording data called NIBRS. And Katie has also talked about that with Argus. Because 2020 was such an unusual year, we usually don't do month-to-month comparisons, but we did do that in a report that was released yesterday publicly, as well as in the presentation you'll see today. And I do have some statistics to share, both about the region, local jurisdictions, and then some national comparisons when we were able to find some other data online. Next slide, please. So just some other limitations. So I noted that this does not reflect all of our crime statistics. Also, not all crime is reported to local law enforcement. We know from victimization surveys that only about 47% of violent crime is reported and only about a third of property crime. And that does not also include identity theft, as I mentioned before. We know from some statistics, and this is in our report also, that in the past year, about 9%, 1 in 10 individuals said that they were a victim of identity theft, and they didn't even know it until their financial institution informed them. That was about half of those cases. And then of the cases where people were aware of it, only 7% said they reported it to law enforcement. So again, even though I'm going to be sharing with you how we're at all-time property lows, I think it's important to consider these factors when we're looking at the data. Also, 2020 was an unprecedented year. A number of public policy changes happened with zero bail of individuals not being booked into jail. In many cases, with COVID and trying to keep social distance from individuals, there have been in many places and at many times less proactive policing than in prior years. We know that there's a lot of discussion looking at public safety reform and what that could potentially have done to law enforcement's interaction with the community, something called the Ferguson effect. And we also know, and I've spoken about this before, with certain legislative changes and maybe reduced penalties for certain types of crime, is it possible that individuals aren't reporting crime? Are they getting on nextdoor.com and thinking that they're reporting crime and not actually calling law enforcement because they don't think it'll make a difference? And is it also possible that for some things, if someone's just getting a citation, maybe it's not as consistently enforced some of the misdemeanor laws than they had been in the past? These are all different factors and theories we've heard as we work with different partners in the community. And then finally, numbers going up or down can mean different things. This is especially true for rape and domestic violence. We've all talked about what's the effect of COVID, for example, on child abuse. When there's not mandated reporters interacting with individuals, the numbers may go down, but that doesn't mean that there's fewer offenses. And in the same way, when numbers go up, it could mean actually that there's better reporting going on. So just some consider the data that I share, please, in that filter and with some of those things in mind. Next slide, please. So in the San Diego region in 2020, we had about 31 violent crimes reported per day. Our highest rate was 9.76 in 1992, and that was down to 3.44, about 3 crimes per 1,000 individuals in 2020. Most of the crime that is reported in this category is aggravated assault, followed by robbery, rape, and homicides. We also have statistics on simple assaults. Those are not included in these statistics, but for every assault, aggravated assault that's reported, we do have about 3 simple assaults. And looking across our jurisdictions, 14 of our regional jurisdictions that report to us had a higher violent crime rate in 2020 than 2019, and 8 had a lower rate, and that data is in our report. Next slide, please. So looking at the change in crime numbers over the past year, you can see violent crime was up 1%, homicide was up 35%, rape and robbery were both down, and aggravated was up 8%. So I'll be talking more about these crime types in the next slides. Next slide, please. So what this does is we looked at monthly homicide data for 2019 and 2020. And I think it's important. So we use the earlier slide said a 35% increase in homicides. And that means it equates to 30 more homicides. And obviously 1 homicide is 1 homicide too many. We had 85 in 2019 compared to 115 in 2020. What we've seen with some different violent crime increases around the country is we've heard a lot of reports of violent crime going up in many places across California. Violent crime was actually down in San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, and Long Beach, but up in Oakland and Sacramento. We had 278 homicides in 1991, and that was our high compared to the 115 last year. But you can see that for 9 of the months, we did have a higher number of homicides in 2020, which is the lighter blue line compared to the darker blue line. And that in December, we really did have a pretty big spike of 18 homicides that last month. Next slide, please. We work with law enforcement to record the homicide motive when we're able to, and this shows the motives that we were able to document in 2019 and 2020 to date. And this is information that comes directly from the departments. The top 3 reasons every year typically are arguments, domestic violence, and gang There's a lot of speculation about what would be happening with domestic violence reports in 2020, and we'll talk a little about that a little bit more in the presentation. But you can see that actually that as a motive was lower in 2020 than it was in 2019. Arguments were up higher, gangs were down slightly lower, and robberies were actually up higher. Drugs are not in this graph, but in some of my conversations with law enforcement, they shared that some of these robberies were actually also drug related. Next slide, please. We're going to be coming out with a CJ Flash next week that delves a little bit deeper into firearms and violence with a firearm, including homicide. I've met with a number of chiefs recently and heard more about ghost guns, about how people can get the guns in the mail that are 80% ready to go, and then they drill a hole and they have a firearm with no record number on it. And we saw some interesting and startling statistics that I'll be sharing on a later slide about increases in gun crime, both in robberies, aggravated assaults, domestic violences. A homicide was used, a firearm was used in the weapon of choice in about half of the months in 2020, but in November and December, it did represent a greater proportion of the homicides that we saw. We looked at the victim characteristics and the homicides that involved a firearm, and those individuals were more likely to be between the ages of 18 and 29 versus being older, and they were more likely to be Hispanic or Latino, Black, African American versus white, Asian, or some other ethnic group. The individuals more likely to be documented as not knowing one another, to be strangers as opposed to acquaintances, neighbors, or family members. Those homicides that involved a firearm were more likely to occur out on the street. And when we looked at the motive where it was documented, it was more likely to be tied to gangs than to, that was the greatest disparity. We saw that that was most likely to be the weapon of choice when gangs were identified as the motive. Next slide, please. This shows rapes. We had 967 rapes reported to law enforcement in 2020. And I think this really does show the how COVID and stay-home orders really did change some of the crimes that we saw. Many times in rape crimes, the victim and suspect know one another. We know that alcohol or drugs be involved in these types of crime situations. And you can see when our stay-home order was most stringent when it first started in April and May, and when people theoretically may have been really worried about catching COVID, we had the biggest drops comparing 2020 in April and May to 2019. Drops again that were still double digit in June, October, and December. November, we had a rise, and I think that was a period of time when we had less stringent stay-home orders in effect, and maybe there were some more places that were open up and people were out interacting a bit more. Next slide, please. Robberies, we had, we're at a 41-year low. We had 2,527 in 2020 compared to 8,554, bless you, in 1992. We look at where robberies occur and whether they're on the street in a commercial establishment, some other location, a restaurant and a bank, and all location types were down. And you can see except for March, when we had that increase of 26%, there were slight increases January and February. We've had 9 months of declines in the number of robberies that were reported. 12 of our local jurisdictions had numbers that were big enough to report the numbers, and all of those had decreases in the number of robberies. The one exception was Chula Vista. So aggravated assaults, we had the highest number in 1994 when we had 15,406. We had our 5th consecutive increase annually in 2020. So we've had 7,913. You can see that there were a greater number of aggravated assaults in most of the months, again, double digits from August on. Of the 21 jurisdictions that had numbers large enough in the San Diego region to compare 2019 to 2020, 16 of the 21 had increases in 2020. Next slide, please. Looking at domestic violence, I'm interested if anybody with the DA's office or law enforcement, when the presentation's done, has any insights on this, because a lot of speculation was going on. Is DV going to go up with people in sheltered situations and the stress with COVID, economic loss? And we may not have seen the effect yet if individuals are still facing some of those issues. We know that individuals had less access to mandated reporters, but we did see increases the first 3 months of the year. And then you can see followed by decreases, some slight increases. Overall, we had 1% greater number of domestic violence incidences reported in the San Diego region in 2020 compared to 2019, but not one clear or consistent pattern like it was with rape. Next slide, please. And then just some other stats related before I turn to property crime. Robberies with a firearm, as I indicated, were up 4%. Aggravated assaults with a firearm, the number was actually up 42%. And we also highlight in the bulletin, it is a mandated reporting part of UCR to look at violent crime against seniors. This does not include property crime, which is also a concern in the scams that we potentially may have seen, but that was up 13% from 2019 to 2020, which is obviously a concern given the aging baby boomer population and a greater proportion of our population being in that age group. And in 2020, 45% of violent crimes were cleared, which means that it was either solved or somebody was arrested. Next slide, please. So property crime, this was kind of the big story, but I do think that these numbers alone don't really paint the whole picture. We had our 41-year lowest property crime rate. It was 10% lower in 2020 than it was in 2019. About 4 in 5 crimes that are reported to law enforcement are property crime. And 1 in every 68 individuals in the San Diego region was a victim of property crime in 2020. You can see that equates to about 135 property crimes reported per day. Most of those are larcenies, which is some type of theft, most often from a motor vehicle. It could be shoplifting, it could be pickpocketing. And then we also had motor vehicle thefts and burglaries, which are categorized as either residential or non-residential. Next slide, please. Looking at the numbers of decreases, larceny dropped the most at 13%, burglary at 5%, which I'll be talking about more in the next couple slides, and motor vehicle theft was at 4% down. Looking across the nation, there was about an 8% drop in 2020 compared to 2019 for the agencies they could report on. And San Francisco, Oakland, Sacramento, LA, San Jose all had decreases in their property crime rates as well. Long Beach was the only one that had an increase that we could find. Next slide, please. So this slide's a little bit crowded, but I thought it was very interesting to be able to look at the data bars together here if we could. So burglaries can either be a residential or non-residential. And obviously people were a lot more home in their residences in 2020 than they were in 2019. So as you can see from the darker, the bars, every month we had decreases in the number of residential burglaries that reported. Overall, it was down 17% in 2020 compared to 2019. The non-residential, we had a greater mix of patterns of data, but it was up 8%. So while burglary overall was down, non-residential burglaries potentially of stores that were closed and people may have gone in and stolen things during that time were actually up 8%. Next slide, please. So larcenies, I mentioned, can be of a variety of different types. This was also at a 41-year low. The most common type is from motor vehicles, which represented about 2 in 5 larcenies we had in 2020. That was down the slightest amount, which was down 8%, which is not surprising because somebody can steal something from a car, no matter if it's in someone's driveway or a parking lot. Shoplifting was down 30%. Bike theft was the only type of larceny that was actually up. That was up 3%. Compared to 2019. And it's interesting, you can see we were down the beginning parts of the year, but we started having some slight increases there in November and December. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as we continue on in 2021. Next slide, please. So motor vehicle theft, again, a slight aberration there in June. I'm not sure what was going on. We tried to see if we could get any information from the Regional Auto Theft Task Force. We're not sure if it's related to some type of data aberration, but it was down most of the year. We are at a 41-year low in the number of motor vehicles that have been stolen over time. Vehicles represent about half of stolen property in terms of the recovery value. 12 jurisdictions had lower motor vehicle theft rates and 8 had higher ones in 2020. Next slide, please. Another little interesting statistic for you. You can impress people at any parties that you're able to go to this weekend, obviously wearing your mask. But the $200 million was stolen in San Diego region in 2020. So even though our property crime rate was down, the value of the property stolen was higher than it was in 2019. And that averages out at about $546,000 per day that is stolen. The fire chief mentioned about arsons, and I had reached out to him to talk about this because really startling numbers. We had 287 arsons reported in 2019, and this was up 92% to 551 in 2020. And we did see that it was fewer structural fires and more that was out in the open. So it is consistent with the possible theory that it could be related to homeless encampments, and what can we do to prevent that as we move into a greater fire season. And 37% of the property that was stolen in 2020 was recovered. Next slide, please. There's been a lot of discussion about hate crime, and we actually saw a decrease in the number of hate crimes that were reported in 2020 in the San Diego region compared to 2019. Obviously, there's probably events that have happened that have not been reported to law enforcement, so encouraging reporting is very important, but there were 87 events, which was a 10% drop. The number one reason historically and in 2022 of what the reason for this hate crime was motivated by race, 72%, 15% by sexual orientation, 10% by religion, 1% by disability, 1% by gender. The most common reason that the race that was associated with the hate crime was actually Black African American in the San Diego region. About 1 in every 2 racially motivated hate crimes. We did try to dig a little bit deeper because there's been a lot of talk about anti-Asian and the reporting maybe being lower in that community. We had 5 reported anti-Asian hate crimes reported in 2020. And 68% of those events were categorized overall as violent and 32% as property. And that's my last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address us on this item? 41 years of crime statistics.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see any hands from the public.
Great. Any members of the committee wishing to address this item? This is for information only, and I think we did receive it via email, correct? I know my staff printed it out for us, and I will be sharing it with my colleagues at our next council meeting. But it's great to have these, the longitudinal comparisons of what's happening. And again, 41 years in comparison, I think is really important to see where we're at, where we've been, and how we can continue to improve the services regarding public safety. I see Mr. Campillo, you are up.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say, Cindy, first of all, thank you for going through the data for us and pointing out the progress that we've seen and some of the areas that we need to also work on as a region. I wanted to just say for the members of the public and also for my fellow members on this committee, one of the other aspects of my time at the city attorney's office was working on the gun violence restraining order team and recognizing that homicides are going up. I wonder, Cindy, most of those are related to gun violence, aren't they?
59% were related to guns, and it's actually, I was just doing a reference on the CJ Flash that I said we're coming out with next week. With those stats, I'm citing the city attorney's program as well as the city's new program of working with the communities to try to target gun violence.
Great, and I would just encourage the other municipalities to really explore utilizing the state law that allows us to take guns from those who are suffering from mental health episodes, who have a 5150 and are showing that they're suicidal. All those folks who are a threat to themselves, we can really help them. But then on top of but that's obviously suicide, not homicide. On the homicides, there's lots of individuals who, whether it's through domestic violence or whatever other threats that they're making, there are mechanisms that don't require prosecution, or sometimes the evidence doesn't get to the level of filing a prosecution against them. but these individuals still are capable of hurting others with their access to guns. And so I would just encourage any member of the committee who wants to, talk about it. I'm always available, and I know that the City of San Diego's Gun Violence Response Unit has been giving lots of trainings well before the pandemic, and I know they're starting to pick up again because I was part of those. And so I know that the City of San Diego is ready to stand with fellow municipalities that want to address gun violence and reduce the number of homicides we're seeing. So just wanted to put that out there, and thank you for presenting on this, Cindy.
Well, and if Mayor Solis supports this too, this could be a topic we bring to a public safety committee meeting. I think this is a type of collaboration and learning from one another that would really benefit from the PSC forum. So we can make that happen if that would be something that the committee would like to have.
Great. Yeah, let's definitely discuss. And I think anytime we can learn from each other, I think it's a good thing, especially in this forum. Okay, thank you, Mr. Campillo. Thank you, Dr. Burke. Are there last call for public comments or comments from the members of the dais virtually? Seeing that this was for Monday.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to tell you there were no hands from the public.
Okay, seeing that, we move on to item 9. It's advancing diversity, equity, inclusion. This is for information only. However, we do have, let's see, hold on, Nadia, who will be presenting on this item. Go ahead, Nadia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure being here today. My name is Nadia Musharian Binderup, and I am the Community Inclusion Director for the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. I joined the department 2 years ago. The position was created for a Community Relations Director. I came from the County of San Diego family, been with the county for about 11 years, new to law enforcement, and the sheriff created this position with the intent to really act as that facilitator and that conduit between law enforcement as well as our communities that we serve. So naturally, being a brand new position, it was very organic in terms of where we wanted to take this position. Over time, granted, our law enforcement stations do an extensive amount of outreach. Just in fiscal year 1920, we had more than 1,700 outreach efforts. So to say we needed a community relations director, I didn't want to dismiss the great work our stations are already doing to build that relationship with their respective stations and communities. But my role essentially evolved into reaching out to more of the underrepresented communities. And that's where my title evolved to Community Inclusion Director, because that's where essentially my position took it. Really, it was just about exploring opportunities for outreach and collaborations with these demographics and communities, and identifying ways that we can serve their diverse needs and really bridging that gap of access to information, learning from them in terms of serving as an advocate for not only their needs, but also for the department. And what I mean by that is hearing from them in terms of how can we extend our services and programs to better suit their needs, and what are we doing in terms of not reaching their demographics in terms of extending these services. So it's an ongoing effort and a lot of relationship building in the past 2 years, but we've made great strides in the efforts so far. And then so we continue to take those efforts into the next level. And so with today's presentation, I just wanted to come before the committee. I had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Burke and SANDAG's efforts with equity and inclusion. And so we thought it'd be an appropriate platform for us to discuss what the Sheriff's Department's doing. So if next slide, please. Thank you. So as you see before you, our Sheriff's Department has our core values. Before when the sheriff joined or took the role as sheriff, he added diversity as our core value. And as you can see, meaning we embrace the strength of the diversity of our employees as well as our communities in that we serve. With that, for those of you who do follow us on social media, whether it's Twitter or Instagram, we make really intentional efforts to highlight the diversity of our department, whether it's through Hispanic Heritage Month, Native American Heritage Month, Black History Month. So we like to showcase the diversity of our department. And if we can go to the next slide, we'll kind of illustrate what that looks like in terms of our demographics. So there in green, you'll see the composition in terms of our racial breakdown of the sworn staff. So this is just our deputies out in the field compared to the sheriff's jurisdiction, so our service areas. So we're truly mirroring and making those intentional efforts at the sheriff's request to reflect the needs and representations of the communities we serve. We don't have other, that's just not a demographic that we calculate, but we just wanted to show that in that as it relates to the SANDAG data set that we're looking at. And if you can go to the next slide. So here before you, we have our gender demographics, just to add that piece of context for your information. Part of a great effort that our Human Resources Bureau tries to strive is continuing to do that outreach for recruitment and retention. We do have working groups that were conceived last year, where we're working on a Hispanic Latino focus group, where we're looking at ways we can make intentional outreach with that demographic. And then we also have a Black outreach group where we're working with members of the community, and we're actually pulling great resources and community representatives from NAACP and Urban League to be part of that and shed some insight on how we can expand our reach into that population and pull them into a career in law enforcement. So next slide, please. So just touching on this post, how we're embracing diversity. This goes with our recruitment efforts. And before you'll see that applicants go through a very rigorous process in terms of onboarding and just becoming transitioned through the process. These are just a few aspects of it, whether it's through the stress analysis, mental health checks, making sure that there's a psych exam involved, and then various components that are associated with post. And essentially 1 in 3 applicants are hired out of 100. So it's not an easy process, but we definitely want to pull from all sectors and cultures throughout our community. We'll do next slide. So it's part of our diversity, equity, inclusion. That's naturally as part of the culture within our organization. And so before you are just some of our policies and procedures as it relates to bias, body-worn camera, code of conduct, de-escalation. These are all factors that are not only impressed upon at the academy, but it's continued throughout a deputy's career, and as well as professional staff, in which we're also brought to that level of expectation to conduct ourselves with that level of standards. During the summer months, as you can imagine, there are significant amounts of discussion about police reform and just meeting with various activists, allies, various community members. And as part of those conversations, it was very eye-opening. We had great conversations in regards to educating each other, learning more, kind of demystifying different processes and experiences from those that we serve in the community, and just allowing them to learn more about the Sheriff's Department. And some fruitful outcomes of that were the use of the carotid restraint was banned, really hardening our duty to intervene policy, our association policy, and elevating our de-escalation policy. Go to the next slide. And as part of that piece for policies and procedures, it's always imperative to have that accountability factor. So before you, I'm sure you're very familiar with our oversight, but this is just something I wanted to put into the slideshow is we have CLRB, which had some reinforcement this year through our board action and allowing them to conduct different aspects of investigation against probation in the Sheriff's Department. The sheriff has its own internal affairs. And then we have the Critical Incident Review Board, which looks at different scenarios and events in which we can build better in terms of way of service delivery policies and just training and tactics. So that's just another one of those oversight foundations that are in place. And then lastly, we have our Division of Inspectional Services, which has that aspect of review that is instilled into the department. Next slide, please. So in terms of, again, going back to that component of access to information to our community members, last year, or actually early this year, last year we worked on updating our website to make it more user intuitive and serve the needs of our community members. So this year we launched a brand new website, and at the forefront, based on community input, we, as you can see in those blue buttons, those are aspects that were of repeat interest for our website users. And so one of that being open data. And that's something where we wanted to make sure that our community members had access to information and just allow them to have information at their fingertips in terms of opportunities to learn more about the way we do business and reports, because as you know from this committee, we're very data driven. And so we just want to extend that to the community. And if you can go to the next slide. This is diving a little bit deeper into that button. We have our RIPA data, crime mapping, the law enforcement monthly report for our service areas, annual use of force, our annual internal affairs report, and immigration SB 54. This is a component that we work closely with San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, and they've been instrumental in terms of helping us shape our policies around immigration enforcement as it relates to SB 54. So as you know, on an annual basis, we go before our Board of Supervisors for the Truth Act Forum, and this is where we like to house our presentations as well as our annual report that we have to provide to the state as it relates to interactions with ICE, and so, or lack thereof, I should say, as well as our Public Records Center, which is pretty much for CPRAs. And then if you go to the next slide, I won't spend too much time on here, but this just allows the community members to have access to our CPRA information, as well as archives where they can look at past records that were requested. So it's more accessible in terms of not repeating for the same thing that maybe someone had requested in the past, as well as the state legislation that required for 1421 and SB 978, which relates to trainings. So all that is available at the click of the button for our community members. Do next slide. And before you run is this slide, and I just wanted to share some training. This is just a topic that is ongoing, as you know, always looking at whether it's cultural sensitivity, mental health crisis response as it relates to PERT and tactical communication. There's this just gives kind of the baseline of what is performed. This doesn't capture essentially the continued training for specialized units and ongoing trainings that are received, especially for like cultural sensitivity, because those come in different platforms and mechanisms. But this just shows the breakdown that our deputies are exposed to in terms of different training. Next slide. Now, in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, the real substance behind our conversation today, the presentation. So the sheriff serves as a commissioner for the Human Relations Commission, and that's been going on for the past year. And they're really gaining their momentum and really exploring, as you can imagine, public safety being a common area of interest given the atmosphere going on across the nation and the importance of building that trust and relationship with the communities that we serve. So that's an audience that we're really looking to explore and leverage in terms of feedback and input. We're also, right now, we have representation on the County of San Diego's efforts for diversity and inclusion as part of Helen Robbins-Meyer's executive team. So we have that access in terms of dialogue and discussion. And we're also, as part of our county efforts as well, and with the board's focus of diversity and equity, we're looking at racial disparities when it comes to services and programs serving the needs of our community members. And so that's where we're really looking to identify any potential gaps and kind of extend ways we can provide either culturally responsive approaches or provide whatever data sets we have as a way to share with the other stakeholders and as county partners to look at the bigger picture of service delivery. And then lastly, we have, as I mentioned, our Sheriff's Department website. And this mechanism was created with the ability so it can be translated in different languages for one's platform, but also we're looking to make intentional efforts to convert a lot of our resources and literature into different languages. For instance, like with the hate crimes issue and concern occurring, we have our brochure available in 7 different languages. So we have that available as a resource for our community members so they know the difference between hate crime or hate incident, as well as the opportunities for where they can report or just express areas of concern to law enforcement. Do next slide. Internally for our department, we have our customer service and diversity inclusion program. The County of San Diego has this initiative throughout the enterprise. In terms of the Sheriff's Department, we've had a champion, but really this past year, we're taking shape and taking that to the next level, where we're having more of a strategic core team help disseminate this culture throughout our department. And that's starting with a training for understanding bias and cultural awareness. And this was given to all of our employees, and this was completed last year. And then we're also looking at taking this to the next level for our supervisors. And as you can see, there's various trainings from the me to we, emotional intelligence, and then just having champions throughout a department to push this throughout their different specialized units. And then we're also looking into bringing more lunch and learn events, to having different speakers from different walks of life, lived experiences, just allowing to kind of diversify different perspectives for our staff. Can we do next slide? Oops, sorry, formatting always gets in the way sometimes. So right here is our ongoing trainings in regards to the community connections. So our Detention Services Bureau had a great collaborative partnership with the San Diego History Center and SD Pride. Prior to COVID, they had an exhibition focused on San Diego's LGBTQ plus stories of struggles and triumphs. And so this venue was a great platform for us to bring in our detentions deputies and professional staff to not only walk through the exhibition, but also get a presentation and more of a training session from SD Pride to explore the cultural awareness and competencies associated with our LGBTQ community members. And then also, how does that apply to detentions when it comes to intake, the needs of our LGBTQ community members, and just understanding as simple as pronouns and the respect factors associated with the needs of our community. And then also, when it comes to this outreach, through dialogue with our committee members, an instance was working with our local trans family support services, just through dialogue that we had at a past LGBT summit with law enforcement. We had conversations about just the struggles that our trans youth are experiencing through school. So it was an opportunity for us to invite trans family support services to our juvenile services unit and allow them to provide a cultural training on the experiences and struggles and just cultural understanding of our trans youth and what they go through when it comes to school settings. And that way our SROs, as well as our juvenile detectives, could be more mindful of their unique needs and know what to look for if they could potentially see someone experiencing any struggles or stress. So that's just an example of some very beneficial collaborations that we've been doing. Also, we have a dedicated LGBTQ liaison for our department that works across our different bureaus in terms of working with other law enforcement liaisons, but also the community and opportunities for collaboration. Next slide. And so as it relates to our cultural competency, we also take it to the next level for those who are Muslim. Ramadan Mubarak, it's our holy month of Ramadan. And so before you are some photos from 2 years ago when we were actually able to go and visit during different iftar dinners. But when I came on board, we have the mosque fire in Escondido, as well as the Chabad shooting in Poway. And so as part of our takeaways from that was really increasing our cultural competency when it came to our Muslim and Jewish community. So before you are samples of some training bulletins that were issued, and these were designed in collaboration with members of the public who are from our Jewish and Muslim community. So they helped collaborate and create these training bulletins for those nuances, especially with the unfortunate circumstances of like homicide and just understanding how to go about an autopsy or death, and then all that's associated with it. So we appreciated their collaboration and just insight in terms of educating our deputies on that process. But then also, as I mentioned, with Ramadan, now that with our public health order allowing for in-person worship taking place, when 2 years ago we established more of a solidified liaison and outreach with more of our vulnerable houses of worship. And so we made intentional outreach as well as establishing those lines of communication. So when we would have holy months like a Ramadan, we would ask and check on them and perhaps see if they would like more patrol due to some cultural aspects associated with the worship and the prayers. And so it's just a great opportunity for us to collaborate and extend our services to the community and allow them to know that we're there for them. Next slide. And so in regards to outreach, this is not an exhaustive list, but just gives a flavor of some of the outreach that we're doing. The sheriff created his LGBT advisory council. Gosh, I think it was 2013, I believe, or 13 years ago. I'm sorry, I'm not getting that correct. But this past year, we were able to add 3 additional members from our Black community to diversify and add some additional perspective and life experiences. Before you, we have Darnell Johnson on the screen in the black shirt. He is now our chair, and so we're looking forward to collaborating with him and taking the advisory council into a new vision that he has in collaboration with the sheriff. And the sheriff also convened an African American Clergy Advisory Council, which is comprised of members of Pastors on Point, which have been great, and they've been part of de-escalation conversations and recruitment efforts. So we look forward to that relationship with them. And we continue, as I mentioned, with our interfaith community groups. They've been wonderful assets. And so we continue to have those dialogues for ongoing efforts. And then one that's near and dear to my heart was this past January, February, we just launched our Academia de Alguacil. It's our Sheriff's Spanish Academy. And we did this in collaboration with the County Office of Ed Migrant Education Program. And this was just, we had 36 graduates for our first program, and it was a wonderful opportunity for us to connect directly. Well, unfortunately, it's through virtual platform, but connect with our Spanish-speaking community members and take down some of those barriers, especially as it relates to immigration enforcement, and just an opportunity for us to show the Spanish deputy side and the way we can connect with them. And it was a wonderful 5-week course. And because of the great the feedback and interest, we're hoping to do it twice a year, but we're looking to now push another academy in the summertime. So we can't wait to see how that shapes up. And the Mexican consulate looks forward to collaborating with us on that as well. And then another pet project of mine that's near and dear to my heart, the International Rescue Committee has been a fantastic partner where we're working with our refugee and newcomer community members. And this is where we extend just kind of more of like a public safety presentation. And it starts very granular in terms of the nuances of when to call 911, even when across the street, just because as they're getting acculturated into San Diego, it's very overwhelming. And so we just want them to know that law enforcement is okay to approach, and it's not nothing they should be scared or timid of, and that we're here to serve them. So it's a wonderful relationship building cohort opportunity that we have, and it's mutually beneficial in that the deputies and staff that are part of these on the sheriff's side, we learn and understand their perspective and nuances in terms of understanding the laws of public safety. So at least we can be mindful of how we can better serve their needs. And so outcomes of that was creating videos on what to expect at a traffic stop with associated handouts and literature, so they can, we don't want it to be a surprise to them. And so that way they can visually anticipate what comes with the process, how to make a 911 call versus a non-emergency call. So these are fantastic dialogues we have, and it's just great to connect with our newcomers. And then just some other community groups to mention, we're part of the San Diego Regional Anti-Hate Crimes Coalition, and then working with the Mano a Mano Foundation, which is more in the North Coastal, North County area. And we look at cultural sensitivity aspects more for our Spanish-speaking community members. So we're actually focused a lot on domestic violence, which impacts that community, as well as drug and alcohol. And in fact, next week, we're going to be part of this drug conference with Mano a Mano Foundation, focusing on drug and alcohol. So we look forward to that continued partnership with Dr. Beatrice Villarreal.
Well, thank you very much, Nadia. I believe this may have been the last slide, correct?
Let's see. Yes, so yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll let you give that closing statement.
No, I was going to say that. So I think that was pretty much it. So thank you for the opportunity to present. I appreciate your time, and I know it's Friday at the end of the week. So thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you. I think Sheriff Gore would like to say a few words.
Yeah, I'd just like to publicly thank Nadia for the great job she's done. As she pointed out when she joined our department a couple of years ago, it was probably the best addition we've had since I've been sheriff. She was able to pull together a lot of hard work that had already been done and then explore new areas with some of our underserved communities during the last year, especially with all the civil unrest. Her contribution has been invaluable. I just want to thank her publicly. So well done, Nadia. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate that. And it's great to hear all the great work that the Sheriff's Office is doing. All right. With that, thank you, Nadia, for the presentation. Are there any other member comments? Are there any members comments from members of the public?
No, Chair, no hands from the public.
Seeing none, again, this was for information only. Thank you. We wish everybody a great weekend. And with that, our next Public Safety Committee meeting is currently scheduled for Friday, May 21st, 2021 at 1 p.m. I will adjourn this meeting. Have a great weekend. Take care.